big slice. This is where we see if the money was made. Welcome everybody. Anthony here with Bulba Bites, bringing you a brand new video, and I hope you enjoyed that previous turkey leg video. Today we're getting into probably the community's most requested video that we make. So we're gonna be doing a brisket for the family, so I thought I would stay up late. It is currently, as y'all can see, almost 11 p.m. I'm starting a little bit later than what I kind of anticipated doing, but nonetheless, we're gonna show y'all today the breakdown of what exactly we do to make an amazing brisket, and it's a step-by-step. So this video will be a little bit longer, but I'm gonna give y'all all the tricks that we use, and we're gonna be recording throughout. So we'll be getting up early morning, rotations for adding logs. We're gonna be doing the whole 9 yards. So I hope y'all enjoy it. But without further ado, let's kind of get right into it. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna talk about is, one, a selection of your brisket, okay? As y'all can see, we got us a Prime 1 brisket, okay? I know a lot of people swear by Snake River Farms. We love them as well. But this was just for a small get-together, so those tend to cost quite a bit more. This prime brisket, as you can see, only costed us 62 bucks, which is not very much when you're thinking about how many people it can actually feed. So that's a huge plus. So what you're looking for typically with a brisket is you don't want, sometimes you're gonna get some loose plastic on it, and it's not airtight. You're also looking for if it has a ton of blood in there. The reason that you really don't want to get the ones with a ton of blood, this isn't very much at all, okay? But you don't want to get the ones with a ton of blood because that means that they were frozen for quite a bit, and now they're thawing out, so it's releasing all of the stuff. So it tends to make for a tougher brisket, or it's just not as good as it could possibly be if you chose the right one. Right now what we're gonna do is we're gonna pat this brisket dry, because you really want it to be as dry as possible so that when we add the binder, if you are gonna add a binder, right? You do not have to add binders. Certain parts of the country don't even use binders. They just do straight up salt, pepper, and some do their own blends. Some do however you wanna do it. There is no wrong way of doing a brisket. The only thing that you got to remember when you are doing a brisket is it takes time. This is not a meat that you want to rush. Okay, trimming. Trimming's first step after we've cleaned it. Yeah, you gotta give it a little pat. You know what I'm saying? Trimming. This is where a lot of people freak out when it comes to trimming, because you spend money on meat and you're afraid that you're just gonna ruin it, right? Rule of thumb for me that I always do is I want the best bite, right? I don't care if that means I got to trim a ton off, if that means that our bite is going to be that much better. Okay, I go around consistently, and I will have about a 1/4 inch of fat going throughout the entire brisket. Okay, the leaner part of the brisket is going to be down here, which is your flat. That is where, if you get lean brisket, you know, when you go out to barbecue places, it's coming from the flat. If you like me, right? If you like that fatty portion of the brisket, then you are looking at the point, which is over here, which is the goodness. And we will show you the difference at the very end once we cook it down, right? This portion of the brisket, you definitely are gonna take off, because look, it's very hard fat, right? This is not gonna break down, okay? You can tell the difference between this, right, and this. You start to see the difference. You see how it looks very soft and malleable, and then this is very hard and dense. This is not gonna cook out, so I always take off that. This is a very high point, right? High point for the brisket, so this is very tall and thick, and this flat is not super thin, but it is probably half the size of this. So we are gonna be very, very conscientious of where we toss the brisket on the pit. So the fire side will always most likely be closer to the point because I don't wanna overheat the flat and dry it completely out. So that's just something to keep in mind. If it was more of a level brisket, then it wouldn't have mattered. But on our brisket, it is not. So, right? It's very, very easy to season a brisket. Keep it simple. In the words of one of my old professors, keep it simple, stupid. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not that hard. It's not rocket science. Do this right here. So 2 of salt. Okay. And then 1 of pepper. And I know you're probably thinking, holy shit, that is a lot of seasoning. It's a thick piece of meat. So you do not have to worry about over seasoning it because this is a huge piece of meat, right? You are not gonna anywhere near reach that. So okay. So that is where I'm gonna keep that at, as you can start to see. Okay. Next, the binder. Mustard. It does not matter. It doesn't have to be premium, insane priced mustard. It's just a binder. Okay. This is not gonna add flavor to it. It's just gonna help with the seasonings to stick to your brisket. You do not necessarily need these. In a traditional Texas brisket, which is where we are at, a lot of companies and a lot of barbecue joints use mustard as a binder. Right, so y'all already know, got to give it the little signature, little pat, all right? We are gonna flip it over and give it some mustard on the other side as well. Let's get this in. We got our salt pepper mix, and now it is time to start to season. We have our charcoal started. Now what you're looking for is we're looking for it to get semi white. We don't want it like a typical barbecue pit where you would want it pretty much all white because we still are going to transfer it, and then we still don't want them to completely burn out before we start adding in our wood. So we're going to give this about 15 minutes, and then we are going to start adding it to the smoker box. Okay. So while we're waiting for our charcoal to kind of get ready for the smoke, the pit, right? I wanted to take a quick second to kind of explain what we're gonna do with the wood. So I use a combination, forgive all the smoke, I use a combination of 2 different woods. I use post oak and red oak for my combos for my briskets because I don't want it overly smoky, but I want a mild smoke. There are 2 different cuts that we use. There's split wood, which as you can see, it is split, okay? And then there is kind of the raw cut that you will see like from a tree, and then you just go and cut it. The reason that you would want both of these is because traditionally I use the split wood to kind of ignite the fire off the rip, and then the raw wood to sustain throughout the cook. When we later on need to ramp up the fire in order to break through that kind of plateau that I told y'all where it stalls out, we are gonna use a ton of split wood in order to ramp the heat up inside to remove all the humidity and then force the brisket to where we want it, which is gonna be around the 190 to 200 degree mark, okay? Okay, the other way and things that you gotta know about using this offset smoker if you are going to be doing briskets is there are doors, and I know it's kind of hard to see, but there are doors right here. Can you see my finger? That will allow airflow. So if you need to increase the heat, you open it up. If you need to decrease it or just level it off and stabilize it, you're going to close that door. The other thing is this flap. You are going to see it right here. This flap right here. If you have it wide open, it is going to allow for the air to, it's gonna ramp the fire because it's allowing more air to flow through your pit. If you close it, which is what we'll end up doing throughout the duration of the cook, we're gonna taper it off a little bit to level off the temperature. We don't wanna completely close it. We wanna leave it like that. Okay, so it has been about 30 minutes. We are about ready to start putting our brisket in, okay? So first things first, like I told you, we have our pan with our water. I'll probably get up a couple of times throughout the night, but this moisture pan is gonna allow it so if I accidentally sleep for a couple hours over, it's not gonna dry out, okay? This will keep that humidity throughout the entire cook. And so on this one, I have 2 levels on this offset. So I'm gonna put it on the top level because heat rises. And that will keep that moisture inside the chamber. Because the heat is coming from our left-hand side, we are gonna turn our brisket like that, okay? The other important thing is we are gonna want the fat side up, okay? So you remember the really, really nice looking part on the bottom? We don't want it to burn, and because heat rises and it's gonna go over, we want the fat side so that it starts rendering into the meat. Okay, so fat side always up, okay? Okay, so it's about 4 a.m. Truly a labor of love to make a brisket. And there are a couple things that we brought with us, a couple things that we're gonna check on. One of them is the wood. We need to double check, make sure we don't need to add another log. I also brought something in case you aren't using a water pan. This is our squirt bottle, filled half and half with apple cider vinegar and water. It's just if you need those additional points on the brisket that are a little thinner that will probably dry out faster than what your water pan's gonna keep. We're just gonna keep hitting those probably every other hour for the remainder of the cook. All right, good morning, good morning. So it is about 8:45 right now in the morning. The brisket has done sometimes what it does. There's a couple of different scenarios. You'll have multiple stalls. Every now and then we are running into that issue right now where our temp has stalled again at 135. So we are gonna be pulling it to wrap it because it's already been smoking for about 8 hours in the smoke. And I don't necessarily want it overly smoky. So we are gonna pull this. We're gonna take it back inside, show y'all how we wrap it, bring it back out. And at the same token, we have some more charcoal coming out to ramp up this fire. We're gonna add in some sliced wood, and not raw. That way we could ramp up that heat, really drive it home for a couple of hours to try to raise that temperature over the stall. Alrighty, everybody. So we are back inside. We are about to wrap this brisket, even though the temp hasn't hit at the ideal stall, which is usually about 160, 165, and then it levels completely off. Every now and then you'll run into a brisket that will have multiple stalls, unfortunately. So what we are gonna do is we are gonna wrap it. I currently am ramping up the fire right now with that split wood. And then we're gonna show y'all kind of what we use in order to wrap this brisket. So I use butcher paper. Some people use foil. I just don't like the way that it works with it. There's no breathability in foil. So sometimes it makes it a little bit more like, I don't want to say soggy, but it does make it a little soggier because it essentially is gonna steam your brisket. This one with butcher paper, it's gonna still allow it to breathe. So it will not retain any more smoke after you wrap this. Okay, so that's important to understand. Before you wrap this, you really want some beautiful color on your brisket because after you wrap it, it will no longer absorb any more smoke. It's a nice even spread because what's gonna end up happening is we are going to end up folding it like this and rolling it like a little burrito. Ironic, right? Okay, the other thing you need to keep in mind is remember where the fat side is. Okay, so this is still the fat side as you can, as we just checked. This is the fat side. You definitely wanna keep that in mind because this will still be going fat side up even after you wrap it, okay? So let's bring this. The key to wrapping is you want it to be tight. So we wrapped our brisket. Now we are gonna take it back outside. The fire should be nice and lively. It should be ramped up really, really hot. Eventually, all the moisture will get out of the pit. We want it to dry out now. We don't want any humidity in there whatsoever, because now it is all about the heat and cooking this brisket and raising the temperature up inside of the pit itself, okay? So that is the name of the game. You start with humidity, that way it doesn't dry out and burn out in the beginning when you still need to smoke it. You remove that water tray to remove all humidity. You ramp up the heat, and then we're gonna raise this temperature up on this brisket until it breaks through the plateau. Once it breaks through the plateau, you're gonna see it. It's gonna climb, 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 climb. And then once you get to about the 190, 195, maybe 200 mark, then we pull it, and then the most important part's gonna happen, where we're gonna let it rest. All right, everybody. We are checking on the brisket now. We are in hour 12 of usually around a 12 to 14 hour cook for a brisket this size. And we finally broke through, well, about an hour and a half ago, we broke through that stall that we talked about. We had 2 stalls, which is very rare, but it sometimes happens with some briskets. We stalled at 130, then we stalled again at 165, which is your kind of your traditional stall. And we ramped up the heat, rammed through that stall, and now we're gonna show y'all where we are at on hour 12 of this brisket. Okay, so it is still wrapped, but now you'll see our point is over here. Look where we're about 180 right now. And you can see how smooth it's starting to go through. Cook 194. So this is where that top, the good part is the fattiest parts of this brisket are where the highest temps are at, which is good. It's gonna render out all that fat, which is what we're trying to do. The point is a little bit behind, or the flat is a little bit behind, but that's okay. We don't necessarily want that to dry out. And so that's the important part, okay? That we hit those temperatures, and now the resting process is gonna begin. The reason that it is so important that you rest large pieces of meat like this, along with big tomahawk steaks, you know, anything beef related that's large scale, roasts, stuff like that, is because what the resting process is doing is it is going to reintroduce those juices that were already inside throughout the meat. Because when large meat like this is exposed to heat, the juices will push towards the outer edges, which is why when you cook steaks or burgers or anything like that, you'll always see that puddle or the moisture come to the top for the indirect side that's not facing the heat. So what resting allows it to do is it reintroduces those juices. They come from the outside and start reintroducing towards the middle. And you cannot skip this part. If you skip this part and you instantly slice, all your juice will run out the second you cut it, and you will get a dry bite. Okay, so it is very important. At this point, we are at a 14-hour cook. Started at midnight. It is already 2 o'clock, 14 hours. Did the trick. Now the final step, let it rest for a couple of hours. At minimum, let it rest 1 hour. I typically let it rest for 2. Our parties usually are around 4 o'clock. So once it's done resting, we are ready to pull, slice, record that for you, taste it, all the goodness. I hope y'all are excited for it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for the finale of, this is the culmination leading up to the final cut of this brisket. We have not looked at it. I haven't looked at it. I'm excited to kind of dive in, slice it up, taste it, see how it came out for y'all. And let me know down in the comments, guys, if you enjoyed this kind of step-by-step breakdown. If you enjoy cooking briskets, how do you do it, so on and so forth. And then let me know what you want the next video to be, and we'll try to bring that to y'all. All right, so without further ado, let's get the party started. All right. All right, here's the brisket, absolutely beautiful. You see it still maintained everything. Looks absolutely gorgeous. We'll look at the other side. This was the part that was actually exposed to the bottom of the pit. That looks absolutely gorgeous as well. And as you can see, it reduced down by about 1/3 in size because that fat rendered in. As you can start to see with the pokes, it is no longer a stiff piece of fat. That heat, when we ramped it up, came through. When you are cutting a brisket, the most important thing when slicing is you need to know where the grains are gonna be running, okay? You always wanna cut against the grain for the most tender bite. As you will start to see, there are grains running like this. Usually for the point, they run in a different direction. So ideally you wanna slice and separate the flat from the point and then cut according to that, okay? We have our Dahlstrom knife, which I absolutely love. And then let's get our first big slice. This is where we see if the money was made. Look at that, absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. I love a nice, healthy piece of meat. Got our nice long blade. Okay. Now, the other way of judging a good brisket is when you lift it up, you do not want it to completely tear apart, okay? You want it to have some sort of rigidity. So if you go like this and it stays together, absolutely perfect. And then the other thing you want to be able to do is tear. Easy tear, does not have any sort of resistance to it. Very amazing piece of brisket. Just look how juicy that is in my hand right there. Right, now the final piece, the taste. For those of y'all who don't know, that's my happy dance, all right? Perfect tenderness. Perfect tenderness all the way throughout. Fat is rendered out perfect. And that's how you're gonna make that brisket, okay? I hope y'all enjoyed this. I'm gonna slice this up and enjoy the holiday with our family. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Let us know, like I said, in the comments down below, what you enjoyed the most out of it. And I know I said enjoy like 5 times, but that's how exciting this brisket just made me. So we'll see y'all on the next episode of Bulba Bites. Y'all have a great one. Later, bye. Gonna be looking out for the brisket. Truly is a labor of love, if you know where I am waking up to cook some food. One of them is we need to check and see if we need to add another log.